Hey there everyone. Today we're going to continue in our series of display properties and positioning within CSS. Hope you'll join. Hey there everyone. Today we're going to continue on our journey of researching display and position properties within CSS. Today our primary focus is going to be FlexBox. FlexBox is one of my favorite systems when it comes to CSS and is one of my favorite display properties because it gives the user so much control, well, the developer actually, so much control over how things are organized in a really automated and organic manner. Whether it be 10 or 100 elements, FlexBox makes working with it extremely easy. So let's go ahead and jump in. To begin, I'll start with a brief overview of how the FlexBox system essentially works. With FlexBox, we're controlling a one-dimensional system, meaning we get to control how blocks or elements within our element are controlled and are moved based on a single axis. So what does that really mean? Well, we get to control a group of blocks either in a horizontal manner, meaning from left to right, and this is known as a row. Following that, we have the column, which allows us to control our blocks in a top to bottom approach where things are stacked vertically. With this, we'll actually be able to control the first rule of FlexBox. So, to go ahead and jump right in, I'm going to show you how we can adjust one of the first automatic rules that's applied to FlexBox. What we're actually looking at on the screen right now is an example of a FlexBox element in action. However, it's defaulted to all of the automatic settings that are involved with the Flex Display option, well, Flex Display value in CSS. We can go ahead and manipulate this first and most vital property with Flex Direction. With Flex Direction, we can go ahead and determine whether our element is going to be collecting items in a manner that's vertical or horizontal. In this case, I'll go ahead and show you guys what the vertical option looks like. Automatically, FlexBox took care of everything for me and stacked everything right on top, just as it should be. But in this case, to start off with the first examples, not crow, but row will be our primary method for FlexBox in this lesson. So to continue on with FlexBox, we'll actually go ahead and review one of the most vital parts. Our FlexBox allows for us to put in content and have it automatically manage the content for us. But what if we want to tell it how to manage that automated process? With the following 3 commands, we'll have complete control over our entire FlexBox. So to begin, we'll go ahead and start with our justification of content, or the actual value being justify-content. With this, we can control how our elements are managed within the block, and depending on what the main axis is. So, for example, if we have a row and we want to justify our content, it will control whatever the main axis is. So for rows, the justification will control how things are spaced from left to right. However, if we change the direction to column, justification isn't based on it's based on which direction it's going, but justification doesn't simply mean the spacing left and right. Rather, whatever spacing is needed on the main axis. For example, if I go ahead and raise the height of our element, we'll find that it still gets centered, just because the main axis that we're calling out is the column. So, in turn, our justify content looks at it in the perspective of a y-axis. Next up, we have what is known as the alignment of content. So we'll go ahead and type out align-content. And with the alignment of content, we'll actually find that it controls things a little different than justify content. Now, this gets a bit confusing, but in order to get the same effect on an X and Y axis, instead of content, in order to control the second axis, even though this is a one-dimensional system, we get to do a align item. With align items, we can actually go ahead and center our elements. Align items. And with align items, we get to do exactly what we did with the justification of the content, but do it on the second axis, being the row. So if we go back to row, we'll find that these two rules switch place. Now finally, we have the alignment of content. So in this instance, we'll use align content. And here I'll go ahead and apply the rule flex start. What does flex start mean? Let's go ahead and dig into that. So to continue on, I actually went ahead and put our align content rule inside of flex start. Why did I do that? Well, I really want to illustrate what we can do with just justify content and align items, since it gives us control of both the X and the Y axis, or how things are spaced between them, and actually review the property values that we can apply to these. For example, in FlexBox we have what are called flex start, which places us at the start of our justification, or on the other end, flex end, which puts us on the other end of our justification. You've already seen center, pretty simple concept, but what if we want to space these blocks around? It would be really hard to program that by hand. Usually you would have to use margins and padding to really make them line up properly. Well, with FlexBox, there's a little bit of magic going on. And what we can do is actually use a property like space around, which will go ahead and actually space our content within our block with the added magic of an extra padding that we don't even have to calculate. Now, let's say I wanted to space things evenly. This completely actually ignores the idea of the padding and margin, but calculates the exact spacing that's needed to be completely symmetrical. And then finally, we have space between, which actually searches out for our border and makes sure it maximizes the amount of space in between our elements. These same property values will actually apply to our align items, allowing us to do things like flex end here as well. Now, let's go ahead and transition into exactly why I commented out my align content. To move forward, I'm going to go ahead and copy my blocks within the larger block, just so that there's too many for it to handle. And if we go ahead and take a look, our spacing's gone. Let's go ahead and fix that. Continue on in order to fix these squished blocks, we're going to go ahead and introduce another value that is inherently hidden inside of FlexBox, but it is paramount in the control of it. Being flex wrap. With flex wrap, our system can work some even more magic, and for us, go ahead with flex wrap, and what this will do is automatically organize our blocks if too much space is taken up. So in this instance, instead of it going ahead and blocking or squeezing the blocks together, what it really does is finds a reasonable limit for the size of those blocks, and once it's past that limit, creates another row for us. It wraps it around. With this, we can have hundreds of blocks, and because of that, we'll be able to keep going around and around and around. So if I go ahead and change a couple of settings here, and instead of around and around and around, think more infinitely. We can just keep going, scrolling down the page, and if there's a FlexBox display option controlling the element, it's going to keep going until potentially your computer dies out or the universe ends. So to go ahead and adjust this, instead of a space between, I'll go ahead and try a space around. And with this center, we have our blocks. I'll go ahead and add a couple more, just so you guys can see this all in action. Let it refresh, and like that, our content is automatically ordered for us. So with that, we can see that wrap allows us to do this. But finally, let's bring in our align content. Wow, suddenly our content is going straight to the top because the content is being aligned to the center axis now. Now, that's really the caveat of the align content. Even though it's a little confusing that we use content and then items to control which direction things are going, our align content, not items, allows us to control things for which with larger quantities. So it essentially controls where things will cross between both the justification of content on a row and the alignment of items on a row. So to show you a good example, I'll change it to end, and somehow it still comes straight to the top. Why is that? Because I'm probably supposed to use flex end, and boom, just like that. So to go ahead and continue, we'll actually look at one final property for FlexBox. So for our final FlexBox property, we'll be touching on how to control an individual block within this massive web of, or collection of, a bunch of different elements. So what I've done is set up an ID called Timmy specifically on block 1. With Timmy wants to actually end up in the end of the line, and I'll go ahead and adjust this so that we're at the start and not the end. And just to show you something, guys, a little something real quick, we also have a stretch property which stretches the content out, but I'm going to go ahead and put a flex start in here again. Now that we have this all at the beginning, I'm going to go ahead and let Timmy go to the back of the line. So in order to do that, I'm going to use the property of align-self. And with align self, we'll go ahead and place the property value of flex end in. So what this should do is actually move block 1 to where block 9 is. And in order to adjust this, let's go ahead and try and troubleshoot what went wrong here. What I'm going to do is, just to make things a little less complicated, get rid of the alignment of content. And here you'll see, for some reason, this allowed for us to move the block down to the end of what is considered the space for this row, about this area right here. Now, if I wanted to, I could also try out center, and like that, we individually control block 1 again. So we have flex start, flex end. Let's go ahead and try the property of stretch. And with stretch, it moves it all the way to the top. So with align self, we can go ahead and take a look at a specific block that we want to change and apply some properties to it in order to maybe differentiate an item within CSS, or in order to just have something stand out. That pretty much sums up FlexBox, a system and/or grid where we get to control the flow of items in a single direction while manipulating a couple of properties along the way. Hopefully you'll join us next week when we touch on CSS Grid, which takes this idea of a single dimension system and brings it up a second level to a two-dimensional system. Hopefully I'll see you then.